It's Thursday, December 24th, Christmas Eve, 2015. And this is the Hermetic Hour. I'm your host, Poke Runyon. And tonight we will review and discuss the magical historical novel, Pythagoras the Mathemagician, by our friend and distinguished author, Karim El Koussa. Now, this is a very important work for Hermetic students because it makes Pythagoras' contributions to our Hermetic and Qabalistic systems come to life by recreating the life and work of the man to whom we owe so much. And who better than a Phoenician scholar to give us a biographic novel of the greatest of the Phoenicians, the father of philosophy, and the original master of the mysteries. Now, in this book, you will learn about the master's Egyptian initiations, which are very much like our Crata Repoa, his mystic mathematics, his sacred geometry, moral and ethical teachings, vegetarian, even vegan dietary regime, and his cosmology, the music of the spheres. And so, if you want to find out about how to painlessly acquire a knowledge of the greatest of the ancient magicians, tune in and we will visit Crotona. And Crotona, as those of you who know something about Pythagoras know, it was actually in southern Italy, on the coast of southern Italy, which in the days of Pythagoras was known as Magna Graecia, in other words, the greater Greece, because the Greeks of the Athenian period, the Greeks settled all over the Mediterranean. And something before we get into this that I would like to explain is that the Greek civilization, or at least the Homeric Greek civilization, the Athenian Greeks, the Achaeans, were preceded by the Mycenaeans, and they in turn were preceded by and related to the Minoans, and the Minoans were related to and preceded by what we refer to as the Atlanteans. And it is becoming more and more and more obvious, and scholars are coming around to this, to realizing that Atlantis had a huge empire all around the Mediterranean, and that probably the center of it was in Santorini, and they were very much related to the Phoenician civilization. In fact, the latest theory is that the Phoenician civilization originated from refugees from Atlantis, and this civilization was all over the Mediterranean, on Malta, and it was over on the coast of Spain. It was as I say, it preceded the Greeks and their colonies. And it very probably was the origin of the Phoenician civilization, which was a blend of the Minoan and the Canaanite. Now, the reason why I want to say that before we get into this is because Pythagoras, the greatest of the philosophers, the father of philosophy, as a matter of fact, Plato was a Pythagorean. And so was Socrates and so many of them. And Pythagoras was also the man who was behind Hermetic philosophy, and the reason why I want to make this clear is because I want you to understand that the wisdom of Pythagoras was finally recovering himself. He had to recover it himself. He had to go to Egypt, and he went all around the ancient world recovering what was actually the wisdom of Atlantis. Egyptians were also influenced by this. So when we understand that, take this novel. Now, this, by the way, is not in this is not in Karim's novel. He doesn't deal with Atlantis at all in here. But I want you to kind of get a perspective on it. That this is that was the knowledge that Pythagoras was recovering, What Karim El Koussa, and by the way, Karim El Koussa is also the author of Jesus the Phoenician, and we've had Karim on the show, and we've reviewed Jesus the Phoenician, and Karim visited us for our 78th seasonal ceremony and blessed our temple, and he's a good friend and a brother, and we really, and a very, very, very talented writer. Now, this book on Pythagoras, which is called the Mathemagician, is a very, very good way for magical students, and I thoroughly recommend this. It's a very good way to get Pythagoras under your belt, because if you're going to approach magic as you should, like a college, like a college course, and like you're going to get a degree in magic, and magicians should approach it that way. You're, as somebody once said, if you read all four of Agrippa's books, you've literally got yourself a bachelor's degree in magic. Well, however, so a lot of what's in Agrippa comes from Pythagoras. So the best way to study Pythagoras, without these huge doorstopper tomes that you would have to go through, is to read this biographic novel. Because what Karim has done is he has in this novel, he has distilled and condensed the essence of what Pythagoras was teaching. And Pythagoras, so what we'll do tonight is we'll read through some of these condensations and give you give you a sort of a taste of the meat of the book, of what you get in this. But first, let's just kind of review the life of Pythagoras. Pythagoras was, his family were from the island of Samos, which is in the Aegean, and it's over on the Asia Minor side of the Aegean, the Anatolia that is now Turkey, but it's over on that side. But it was primarily a Phoenician colony, and Pythagoras was the son of a very successful Phoenician merchant, who also had quite a presence in Greece, and so Pythagoras, when he was young, he spent time in Greece. Now, Pythagoras was born over in Phoenicia, though he was born over in Sidon, and his father was born in Tyre, or Sur, and but Pythagoras himself was born in Sidon, but he grew up in Samos, and then he went at a certain age, when he became out of his teens, he went over to Phoenicia to be initiated in the Phoenician religion and the mysteries. And what's really, really fascinating about this is, and of course, Karim El Koussa is a Phoenician. He lives in Lebanon, and he is very familiar with ancient Phoenician, and he has Pythagoras in this book going up to Aphaka, up to the temple and the grotto and the waterfall up in Aphaka. And those of you who have been following our program, you know that Aphaka is one of our sacred spots in the order of the Temple of Astarte, is because that's where originally where the dying god was Baal was, and and the source of the river Ibram, which flows down to the Mediterranean. And that's, I think we've discussed this many times on this show, how the river in the springtime rises up to a certain layer in the gorge it comes out, the waterfall comes out of the grotto up at where the temple is, and then as the water rises up to a hematite layer, a layer of iron ore, stratified layer of iron ore on the side of the river, the gorge, and the river runs red. And this is a natural analogy or a natural allegory for the blood of the dying god. And Karim has young Pythagoras up there in a Aphaca, and I'm going to read that little section on that here, so you can get the feeling of this, because Aphaca, as I said, is a sacred. This is the sacred temple and natural shrine of Astarte, and also I might mention that there was, a temple to Astarte up there at Aphaca in 300 A.D. Saint Chrysostom. Why they ever canonized this guy, I'll never know. This Saint Chrysostom led a mob of irate Christians there to that temple, and they killed about 300 of our worshipers up there at Aphaca, the temple. And then the river really did run with real blood, and they destroyed the temple. And that occurred in 300 A.D. But let's see here. Let's the lesson ended as they reached a small door in the rock. The magician levied the heavy bolt and opened up a dusty grotto. Go ahead. The servants will help you clean up. I'll meet you later in the chamber above, the guardian informed him. They pushed him gently forward and closed the door at once. In the grotto, the same assistants greeted him with the same impassive faces, and they led him to a laboratory where they subjected him to a cleansing process that included washing with hot water and soap, and shaving his head and beard, and changing into a dry white linen tunic. Pythagoras welcomed the refreshing feeling, and of course, the food they laid down for him on a low table of carved brass in a private, luxurious room. And he relaxed in a comfortable couch, content that the tests had finally ended. Feeling victorious, he began to enjoy the calmness that enveloped him. And the sound of music drifted tender and soothing from somewhere in the background. Now, let me see here. I got I'm in the wrong place here, and I got to get back to where I ought to be. Let's see. Michael did not react to the comment. This man, the man in purple standing in front of him now, is a true seeker of truth. He is really on the right path towards wisdom, the high priest mumbled in his heart. He simply looked at him directly in the eyes and nodded silently with a little grin, and then took his usual seat. Without further ado, he uttered evenly, "There is only one God, Al Elyon, the Most High, and the One." His calm voice issued a totally new topic, moving the conversation up to a higher level. Chilled by the lack of interest of his tutor, Pythagoras gawked at him in a moment of disbelief, yet the introductory words captivated his interest at once. Trained by Thales to master his self-control, he quickly swallowed his disappointment. Michael rubbed his long white beard as he waited for Pythagoras to resume his seat. In his eyes, a glint of approval, maybe admiration, lifted the spirit of Pythagoras up again. Along with El Elyon, there was Anata Astarte, described as his wife and also his sister. The high priest continued, as if he had never stopped. From their union came Adonis, the synthesis of that ancient perception of reality. Adonis is then regarded as the manifestation or the incarnation of the God. And this is the Holy Trinity, the great mystery of all times. And what is El? Pythagoras inquired, leaning forward to heed the answer. Not noticing the lifted eyebrow of his tutor, he hastened to clarify his question. I mean, how do you define him in a more, let's say, exact theological word? Al is the one, the first light, period. The sun is his physical reflection, for it is the most precious and the most powerful element of light and fire. The sun gives heat to our globe, the earth, and life to its creatures. The sun reigns over time and organizes it perfectly. It also controls and best coordinates the movements of all the other heavenly bodies around it. Occasionally time, or what we also call cosmos, manages to escape from the sun, and in consequence nations lose their tracks. They undeniably stagger through a path of illusions, darkness, and diversion. Thoughtfully, Pythagoras contended in a murmur, "Oh, I see what you mean. I see that." Then, looking back at him, he posed a pertinent question. Who is Anat? Anat, my son, is the female principle, the Virgin Lady. She comes second in the Trinity. El requested from her to plant the soil with love, to pour peace in the bosom of the earth, and to multiply love in the heart of the fields. She abided with the absolute devotion and delivered their son, Adonis, to be the Savior of the world. Michael paused for a second. He stood up, joined his hands behind his back, and quietly paced the chamber in front of Pythagoras. The child came as the supernatural synthesis of their divine union, so to speak. He happened as the manifestation of goodwill to all nations. He transpired as the incarnation of love and peace, a way for the salvation of mankind. He came and died and resurrected and saved the faithful, defeated Kronos and touched immortality. And so the son of the first son became the second son to reign over life. Mankael ended with eloquence the expose that revealed the basis of their theology. Pythagoras felt overwhelmed by that astonishing yet clear description of the three main divine principles that compose the core of his ancestral religion. What a resolute way of seeing things, he thought, changing and moving them from a limited perception to an infinite visualization. It should have happened, it could have happened, it happened, and it will happen. And it will happen only by the goodwill of the mind and the faith in love and peace. And as soon as they inhabit the life of a person, they can be stretched out and all over the face of the earth. Individual consciousness certainly leads to collective consciousness, he concluded, yet Kronos stands still. Deeply convinced, he absorbed this theology. He deemed it an evolved religious system, a valuable allegorical look over mankind in general, and individuals in particular, and that included their salvation, their spiritual evolution, and hence their resurrection. Clothed in purple as always, contemplating nature from his favorite spot on the rock above the valley, Pythagoras pondered over the issues of religion. A breeze wafted from the valley, and in its course the trees swayed, the leaves rustled, and the birds fluttered their wings away from the branches hovering about him. Pythagoras closed his eyes for a moment. Relishing in the musical combination, he inhaled deeply the peace and joy of the song that nature granted him. And from this spot, Pythagoras watched the great Phoenician temple of Astarte lingering in his view, right on the summit of the mountain of Gebel. women, like their goddesses in a previous undetermined time, came to mourn the death of Adonis. They wept, they lamented, and pounded their chests. And remember our dirge from Adonia. Hoya, hoya, Adon. Alas, my brother, alas, my lord. Somewhere a flute gushed out melancholic notes. The echo on the adjacent mountains and deep down the valley below conveyed the sounds of the memorial mourning to Pythagoras. And that is the Adonia ceremony, which we do in the summer. He looked down the valley and to the Adonis River, whose water appeared tinted in a blood-red hue, most probably from the red soil of the mountain, Pythagoras reasoned. He knew too well that devoted believers deemed it to be the blood of their god Adonis, wounded to death by a boar, some say a lion, and in earlier, of course, that was he was killed by Moat. The mourning ritual continued until the rebirth of life on the third day, and the resurrected sun then shone intensely upon the holy mountain and its sacred valley. And on that special day, the believers gathered from all around the area, their heads completely shaved. As per the religious ritual, the god Adonis would come to life once again and ascend straight to heaven. And further on here, let's see. I'm talking about Mount Carmel, which is also a holy place in that area where there still is a monastery. Mount Carmel happened to be the ultimate abode at the time for such an exploit that might bring about the same kind of illumination. Mount Carmel being the most sacred of all mountains and the most inaccessible to the populace, it would definitely be the best of the choices. Also called in Phoenician Carmel, the generous vine of El. Mount Carmel harbored a Phoenician temple dedicated to El and his son Baal or Adonis, united as one in the form of El Baal. And the temple, long erected on the top of the mountain, always received in the sanctuary of its walls those thirsty for the drink of the gods. And all around the holy mountain, from the bottom base all the way up, small temples stood here and there. Many natural grottos dwelt in the area, carved in splendor by nature into the rocks, and improved later on by human hands. And beside the great temple of El Baal, there existed another important one dedicated to Asherat, the mother goddess of the Phoenicians. Asherai was the Virgin Lady of Anat herself, the Queen of Heaven, who had planted the soil with love, poured peace in the bosom of the earth, and multiplied love in the hearts of the fields. And now that, over here, let me see, I got something else to pick up on this. The Mediterranean world often sought to find enlightenment inside these monasteries and grottos, where they would dwell in total seclusion. Hence, Mount Carmel, cradle of the monastic and contemplative life, stood as a shrine to the Virgin Lady Anat, the god El, and their ever-young and beautiful son Adonis. And for the believers, Adonis incarnated the cycle of nature and emphasized the spring and the resurrection of every atom in the kingdom of life. Highly recommended by Manka Pythagoras, was at once recognized and admitted into the great temple, and after a few days' walk in the wilderness, as a matter of fact, the temple of Mount Carmel had long decreed very strict entry rules and never received common visitors, the outcasts, the ill-mannered, and the non-qualified students included, among others. So that gives you an idea of his Phoenician experience. And then, after studying in Phoenicia, and he he decided it was time that he should go to Egypt and receive their initiation. And so he set sail for Egypt and arrived and went through a series of initiations which are, as I say, very, very similar to our the way Karim describes them here. They're very similar to our Crata Repoa, which of course was, as you know, the Crata Repoa tradition is the original name for it was the initiation of the Egyptian priests, and Crata Repoa was put together by a coterie of German Masonic scholars who researched up everything they could find in the old writings, Iamblichus and Porphyry and all the rest of them, and Herodotus and what have you, to see if they could reconstruct these Egyptian initiations. Well, so what Karim has Pythagoras going through is very similar to our Crata Repoa initiations, and as one of them here, where Pythagoras woke up from his sleep to the sound of exotic music. He smelled a powerful aroma of jasmine and roses in the room. Something felt strange to him. He opened his eyes to astonished look at a feminine silhouette swaying to the musical rhythm. Behind a white translucent curtain, her body moved languorously and enticed his basic male instincts. The woman appeared from behind the curtain, a wholesome embodiment of female beauty. He swallowed hard. Her long black mane waved down on her golden skin. The sheer blue tunic barely covered her beauty, and all too slowly the curves of her body undulated as she closed the distance to him. And with every one of her steps forward, her hips stirred in an erotic manner that warmed his insides, and her powerful sensuality blazed the blood in his veins. And in her hands, a silver cup of red blooming roses fused out an arousing fragrance that caressed his skin and warmed his senses and fueled his desires. And he lifted his weight on his elbow to ogle the exotic woman. Her big dark eyes and full lips tempted him. Dazzled, and totally mesmerized, he leaped to his feet, hesitated a bit, thought for a moment, but then, with an uncontainable, strange impulse, he dashed to grab her by the wrist, and he brought her body tightly to his with his other hand, and he fondled her breast. Her dark eyes hypnotized him. "Are you afraid of me, handsome man?" she murmured in a guttural voice. His insides quivered and with reeling want, and his hands shaped her feminine curves and further down to caress her hips. And she said, "Go ahead and love me." And it encouraged him. And his mouth neared hers, and she whispered, "With my body I shall give you the prize of the winners, the oblivion of pain, and the cup of happiness." He halted just an inch from her parted lips. Somehow her words had slashed his mind like a sword and blasted him awake from a lecherous tension in which he had basked temptation. He became conscious all of a sudden of the fact that he was just about to jeopardize all that he had stood for, and she must have sensed his hesitation, for her attempt at seduction intensified, and she stroked his chest to grab his hand, kissed his fingers, and her eyes looking up at him dragged him to her couch. Pythagoras beseeched all the powers left in him to fight the fervor that burned his flesh, and he slapped her hands away, and he stood up with an immense exertion of willpower. She seized his hand. She tried to pull him back to her, and he refused and to yield. However hard it felt, he snatched himself away from her enticement, and she marched to the middle of the room, and he veered angrily and glared at her straight in the eyes. "Touch me not, woman, for I have not yet come to my higher self. And you know this, don't you?" He raved and ranted. "You aim at slowing my progress by engaging me in my sexual desires, don't you? You, woman, are stepping on my way. Get out, Pythagoras fulminated. But more than that himself, for having risked falling into her temptation. And the woman lowered her eyes in surrender, and her attempts to seduce him had failed. She stepped back and back all too slowly. And suddenly the priests in white robes stormed in with bright torches, and they chanted hymns to the goddess Isis. The woman sneaked shamefully behind a curtain, never to be seen again. And the priests surrounded Pythagoras and led him to the sanctuary of Isis, with all due honor of a winner. Now, this is right from the Crata Repoa. Now, we don't do this anymore. But it was right in the Crata Repoa, and it was the daughters of the priests, actually, who participated in this particular test in the initiation in Crata Repoa. So, and also too, I want to mention that is very, very similar to the scene in Joseph and Asenath, where Asenath, who is in allegory Mary Magdalene, and Joseph, who is in allegory Jesus, where they first come together. And this is very, very almost an identical scene. Of course, in the case of Joseph and Asenath, they eventually, or Jesus and Mary Magdalene, they eventually do come back together. But this, as I say, is definitely, in the Crata Repoa scene. Now, Pythagoras, he gains the Egyptian initiations. He gets through them, and he gains the Egyptian initiation. He goes back, to Phoenicia, and he tries over in Greece. He tries to start a community, and have a school, and it doesn't work. The particular city that he's in, they're not quite ready for his teachings. What he really wants to do is have himself a kind of a community where he can teach, and where his students, male and female, where they can learn the mysteries, and also where they can have a sacred community. And it's kind of like it's almost like he wants to have a magical and mystical university. But he isn't successful in doing this in Greece, and so he decides, after he realizes that it's not going to work in this particular town he's in, he decides that they're going to go to Italy, which is Magna Graecia, Greater Greece, because at that time Rome was just a little town at that time. And this was back around 450 BC, and Rome had still not overcome the Etruscans yet. And so Italy was all around the coast of Italy. You had Greek colonies, and he settled on Crotona down in southern Italy, on the eastern coast of southern Italy, and that's where he started his school, and he was immediately rather successful there, because he was, by this time, something of a miracle worker. And one of the miracles that he performed, I don't know whether you call it a miracle or not, but it certainly was amazing. He went down to the beach where the fishermen were coming in, and these fishermen had a net full of fish, and Pythagoras Pythagoras was already very, very much of a vegan. He didn't want anybody. He didn't eat meat, and he didn't eat fish, and he was But he saw that these fishermen had this net full of fish, and he said, I will tell you exactly how many fish are in that net. Exactly how many. And if I'm right, I want you to throw them all back in the water. And they said, well, wait, you know, we're fishermen. This is what we do for a living. Well, don't worry about that. He said, just go ahead and I'll tell you how many fish are in the net. And if I'm right, then you cast them all back. So they took him up on it just to see if he could. And he guessed there was 253 fish in the net. And he didn't guess. I mean, he knew by his mystical calculations. He knew there was exactly that number in there. And so they proceeded to get all the fish. They started counting fish in there, and all the fish still stayed alive. And they were all lying there on the beach. They stayed, all the fish stayed alive in the net. They're counting them all. Sure enough, he's exactly right. And so they oh my gosh, they got to throw the fish back. So they throw the fish back in the water, and then Pythagoras pays them off for the fish. He buys the fish, and he tells me, he says, you know, this is what you do for a living, and you got to feed your families. And I just wanted to, I just wanted to demonstrate that, and so I'm paying you for this. So they thanked him, but the story spread around that he was a miracle worker, and so he developed a number of followers in Crotona and young people, and he managed to get a following and became one of these wandering philosophers. He'd wander around lecturing while he wandered around with his flock following along with him, and he taught his doctrine of cosmology. Another thing about Pythagoras that was very important was that he was a musician, and he played the lyre. Now, of course, what Karim does not get into here is the monochord, but we've discussed that before. But anyway, Pythagoras played the lyre, and he believed that music was literally the soul of the world, and music was an expression of mathematical truth. And one of the things we were discussing a little while ago about how the Kabbalion is mostly modern and modern Hermetic philosophy and not ancient. Actually, as I was reading through this, and he starts talking about the vibrations in relationship to the strings of the lyre, and of course also the strings of the monochord. And I got to thinking, the vibration, the vibration of the strings, and that of course is that aspect is dealt with in the Kabbalion book. So perhaps the Kabbalion books are a little more ancient than we thought. But anyway. I want to read a little bit here about the hyper. Well, this is the thing about the Hyperboreans here. At this particular moment, in which the sun extended its morning light over the Italian plains, Pythagoras ambled all by himself, and he cherished these saunters that connected him with the peaceful, splendid nature that characterized the Italian landscape and almost every part of the Mediterranean world. And these promenades often led him to the adjacent towns where the opportunities to confer wisdom never lacked. On a particular day, the master performed something really unusual. While addressing the citizens of Metapatonum, he appeared simultaneously in Tauromenium, known today as Sicily. The people witnessed his presence in each of these cities, even though at a great distance separated them by land and by sea. Some ascertained having seen the white man walking on the water that linked both cities, and some alleged that he had overcome the distance in so short a time by means of a golden dart given him by Abaris, the old priest of the enigmatic Hyperborean tribe. Now, the Hyperboreans were well, they were Scythians actually. They were northern up in Central Asia, and so this dart, this dart is the same one that Apollo was supposed to have brought down from Hyperborea. Now, whatever the means, such a mystical manifestation shocked the citizens in both cities. Now, this business of appearing in two places at once, this has been attributed to Apollonius of Tyana, and it's been attributed to Hindu yogis. There have been a number of people that this has gotten to be a sort of a standard thing, but perhaps Pythagoras was the first one to do it, to be in two places at the same time. But this, I thought I would mention that one. Now, let's get into this philosophy of numbers here, because Pythagoras believed he was a musician and a mathematician. Of course, that's why Karim calls him the mathemagician, because he believed that numbers, and you have to realize that this is the origin of Kabbalah, this business of numbers representing gods and representing divine forces, and of course numbers were also letters in those days, because the Phoenician alphabet, which became the Greek alphabet, which eventually became the Hebrew alphabet, by the way, the Greek alphabet, the Phoenician and Greek alphabets had numbers representing each letter before the Hebrew alphabet ever did. Now, the two most important numbers, my friends, are 1 and 10. I'll explain that reason in a while and elaborate on the hidden properties of all the numbers from 1 to 10. For now, know that the numbers are the measures of all things, and each number has its own personality, whether it is masculine or feminine, complete or incomplete. 1, the number 1, is the monad, the universal mind that diffuses through everything. He proceeds to elucidate the symbolic meaning of the numbers. 10, the number 10, is the very best number because not only does it contain the first 4 numbers, 1, 2, 3, and 4, it is also the sum of all of them. 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 equals 10. And 10 is the ensemble of the ultimate truth. Listen and heed. The act of creation occurred by the indivisible power of the One. It is a solitary, all-embracing whole in which everything is truly interconnected. He paused for a brief moment. The brief moment it took him to glance at them. The 10, or the whole, is the superlative manifestation of this interrelated reality. Adding to that, harmony is the mysterious binding agent whereby every existing atom in this vast cosmos is related to the other. He waited for them to reflect on the knowledge he had just imparted. He meant for them to absorb the deep meaning behind the statement, and then he continued. Listen to this and listen carefully. I am using the word cosmos for the first time to indicate a well-ordered and harmonious universe. The cosmos is, in fact, an immeasurable musical instrument. In perfect tune with itself, its vibrating numbers produce melodious tones that respond almost everywhere. Hence, both the universe of gods and man, heaven and earth, the microcosm and the macrocosm, are all linked together eternally. They do reflect the same harmonious proportions we examine in mathematics, yes. But this is only achieved through the divine numbers, which are the primal reality. Now this is almost as big an aha as the great I am. If you really, really contemplate it, it really is. Now, to really involve the powers of the cosmos, like an initiate should, there is no need to perform prayers and rituals. Instead, put thyself in synchronicity with them. And so, if you use the same numerical proportions as those of heaven, then and only then, dear brothers and sisters, would you be definitely able to vibrate in the same frequency of heaven. Your spirit would call forth the heavenly spirit, and it would descend upon you like a white dove from the sky. It would descend upon you like a white dove from the sky. The sentence reverberated for a long moment in the secret chamber, deep inside their inner realms. The philosopher wanted to ensure that they would always and only seek for and long for heaven. He waited because the next revelation would surely incite even more of their desires to synchronize themselves with the numbers that existed behind the powers of the cosmos. This approach, without any doubt, allows me to hear the music of the spheres and therefore live in harmony with the universe, he asserted with great confidence, as he read clearly in their eyes a new, fiery aspiration. The cosmic music of the muses should be imitated here on earth, starting with our own white city. Only then shall we move on to the other neighboring cities. If this is done successfully, I assure you that we will achieve a state of harmoniac, a true and strong union of minds and hearts among all the people of the earth. They were all in wonder for a while, dreaming and imagining that incredible yet difficult to accomplish union of all the people of Mother Earth. Now, that's strong stuff, because what he's saying is really the basis. This is what we base our entire yoga system on, is Pythagoras' music of the spheres. By the way, along with Karim's book, if you want to get a complete grasp on Pythagoras, Pythagoras the Mathemagician is wonderful to get the whole picture. Because, as you can tell, Karim has done a wonderful job synthesizing these principles. However, you want to really dig into this, then I also suggest Kitty Ferguson's The Music of Pythagoras. Now, we've discussed this book before, and I mentioned it numerous times in our yoga book. Kitty Ferguson is a musicologist, and she has written a book on the music of the spheres, and it's called The Music of Pythagoras, and I strongly recommend you get that along with and have that along with Pythagoras the Mathematician. Now, let me go over here to the golden verses. The golden verses of Pythagoras. Now, this Pythagoras the Mathematician takes Pythagoras all the way through his teaching, his life, all the way to his martyrdom. And here he had this beautiful community in Crotona, the white city that they built on the slopes above Crotona, looking down on Crotona, and they had this idyllic community, this university. But eventually, one of Pythagoras' own students, turned against him and raised up a mob to attack the city and convinced the people in Crotona that Pythagoras was unscrupulous and was actually a black magician and all this stuff. And led this mob of in the form of a militia, and they burned the city down, and of course they killed Pythagoras. And so we don't have that allegory of him not running across the bean field in here, which he probably never did. But this is in reading the story of this student of his who rebelled against him and betrayed him and turned the people of the town against him. It's so much like what seems to happen to every magical leader, and it gets pretty close to home too. It seems like the worst enemies we have are our own students who get who seem to get this idea that, of course, one of the problems with magic and what Pythagoras was teaching, if you try to make everybody find God, unfortunately, you're liable to find God turn against you. And this is one of the dangers of magic, and it certainly did Pythagoras in eventually. Now, Pythagoras had a very moral philosophy, and a very healthy way of living that he taught, and very an ethical way. And this philosophy has been passed on to us in a small set of verses called the Golden Verses of Pythagoras. Now, of course, they were written down long after he passed on. They were a few hundred years before Christ that they were written down. But what Karim has done here is he has pretty much condensed them in here, and I'll read the condensation of them here. The truth I will tell you, no one will find either in words or in ways of life anything more perfect than philia, friendship. Philia is a universal law of mutual attraction and interdependence. Philia is a cosmic force that attracts all the elements of nature into harmonious relationships. Thus, select your friends and life acquaintances according to what affinities you share with them. Among all the people you may encounter in life, whether here or outside, elect them from among the ones who excel in virtue. You must realize that a friend is another self that you should honor like you honor a god. Friendship is equality, and among friends, everything should be in common. Do not get into fights with them. Do not reach the destructive level of hatred towards them, especially for insignificant, silly mistakes. Yield to kind words and helpful deeds as far as you can, for ability is near to necessity. Pay attention to the following advice. I ask you today to cast your pride away, for it is better to live a life of modesty than of egotism. When you are happy, do not exaggerate your expressions of laughter. When you are annoyed, hinder your anger from your faces. I tell you, do not spend in excess like those careless of what is good, nor be parsimonious. Opt for the middle path, as moderation is always best. So choose the average way instead. Think wisely before acting to avoid foolishness. It is the worthless man who gets in the habit of speaking and acting without tact and without consideration. Only perform such acts in a way that you will not regret them later. I advise you to practice a lifestyle of purity, never debauchery. Avoid all deeds that might cause envy. See that you always perform and undertake what holds no harm to you. Discard any attempt to embark on matters that you ignore, but learn what is necessary. In truth, this is the way to ensure a more pleasant life for yourselves. A major advice, my brothers and sisters, is for you to recognize that death comes to everyone. Know that wealth will sometimes be acquired, and sometimes lost. And whatever your destiny and whatever your grief, as mortals, by divine probability, bear them without complaint. Yet it is only right to improve your existence as much as you can. Remember this, fate does not confer as many sufferings on good people. A golden rule for you to know, my friends, is that many words befall men, wicked and noble alike. Do not be astonished or constrained by them. If a lie is told, endure it with gentleness. Whatever I tell you, carry it. Whatever I tell you, carry it out to fruition. Yet let no one persuade you by word or deed to do or say what is not best for you. Be liberal and be candid. I strongly recommend for you to adopt simple garments that are always clean and chaste. Do not adorn your bodies with gold or the like, especially when you enter the temple to perform religious rites. Purity, I tell you in truth, is a sign of equanimity and justice in reasoning. And as for what you consume, my brothers and sisters, I warn you against eating meat and fish. And this kind of food reverts you back to your natural instincts. Do not eat beans either. My observation and experience attest the interference of this plant with the process of lucid thinking. It distorts the prophetic visions during our meditations and dreams, and instead drink as much water as you can, and wine but in small quantities, for they are both beneficial to the body, and so you should not be neglectful of your physical health. Exercise your body, consume your food and beverage with moderation to avoid regretting the detriment of any excess. And it makes me want to reread Ben Franklin's essay on what happens when you eat too many beans. But anyway, this is kind of condensation of the Golden Verses, and interestingly enough, this pagan philosophy seems to go right along with the first part of Genesis in the Bible, and continued all the way till Noah made his first landfall, and then we started killing animals and eating them after that, and in biblical terms. And so Pythagoras is right along with the original pre-flood, going right along with the original pre-flood people. However, I'm wondering on the fish thing because Atlantis certainly was a fish-eating culture, and the Phoenicians certainly were too. But Pythagoras must have at some point decided that fish were just as bad to eat as meat. So that's not going to stop me from eating cold water fish because I think it's good for you. Now on the cosmology. Over here we have, in the latter part of the book, we have an essay on the Tetrachus, and the Tetrachus is the geometric extrapolation of the number 10, and the Tetrachus was the secret symbol of the Crotona Brotherhood, and we still use it in magic. It's and the Golden Dawn and the OTA. It's used. The Tetrachus is used quite a bit in initiations and whatever. What it amounts to is an equilateral triangle, and you put 10 letters or dots in it. And what you do is you put 1 at the top, and then under that 2, and then under that 3, and then at the bottom 4. And that's gives you add those all up, it gives you 10, or you and that fulfills it makes 10 as I said, the perfect number. Also, there's a great deal of philosophy behind that, as those of you who have followed our magical procedures, you're aware that we that we manifest in a triangle. We have a triangle of manifestation, and that comes from the Tetrachus. And in here, in the book, I won't read it, but in the book he discusses the formation of the triangle as the first solid. That you have the point, and then the line, and then the third point forms the triangular plane, and then point 4 is the point of manifestation at the center. He also deals with the so-called Platonic solids, ending in the dodecahedron for the whole cosmos. And this, is attributed to Plato, but actually people are pretty generally think these days that Plato's Timaeus is primarily Pythagorean, and this, as I said, this book gives you a very, very good handle on Pythagoras and his teachings and his life and his goals and his entire way of doing things, without having to wade through some very, very heavy material. Because I got a library on Pythagorean mathematics and everything else at home, including a monochord, for measuring the music of the spheres. So this way you can get your Pythagoras. But I still think, along with this, please look at Kitty Ferguson's The Music of Pythagoras. I think these two books go very, very well together. And let's see, next week we'll have some very interesting things to report. We have a very distinguished guest arriving in a few days, and we'll have some very, very interesting things to come up with next week on the Hermetic Hour. So until then, good magic, and we'll see you in a week.